we've been kind of dealing with the same interfaces for decades now. And I think it's gotten to a point where we're getting really tired of it, and these are kind of conditioning our ways of thinking. And so if I look back even further into the past of computing, we heard today about around the 60s and 70s for the origins of computers. Well, if we go back even further, it kind of stems in the counterculture movement, which came from the beatnik movement in America. And they were dealing with a kind of different problem, but I want to kind of try to make the connection that they were dealing with the issue of media. We're also dealing with the issue of media today, just in kind of a different form. So these are some of the beat poets here. And their tools, their media of their time, they were working with text through books and writing. And they found that this language was kind of restricting not just what they were trying to write about, but how they were thinking about it. The language being the English language through text, right? And so they developed this method called the cut-up method, which was trying to break out of these ways of thinking that English and language and the trappings of the media they found themselves in. So I have a tool that does a somewhat digital equivalent, but what they would do is they would take kind of like newspaper and they would just cut up, or any printed material, and they would cut up the different texts together, and they would try to rearrange these, and sometimes in a random arrangement, and see if they can come up with interesting new combinations. And this is kind of the key of the cut-up method. Originally they did this with text, but what I'm saying here is that this has been done with just media in general. Any way you can communicate is trapped within a particular form. It's being text. So, for example, this is what they do. This is the abstraction interface hell that we have now, And even this whole interface, right? We're just trapped in boxes, and until someone tries to, create a whole new paradigm from the scratch up, I think we should be able to try to break away from this, whilst just kind of, even though we have to live within this kind of world. So I want to also cut up these interfaces. That's what I'm thinking. So if we consider this as printed matter, which is not, but it is also media. And in the past they did this with, let's say, newspapers. And when we moved into the digital media, we kind of tried to take newspapers or printing material and then take that idea and just sort of convert it to a digital form. So we take a newspaper and try to make a digital newspaper that's kind of the same, and then we jumped into here. So this is what they do. Right? And then you just rearrange these and create different kind of media. The idea is the things that you think are interesting or important may not be the things that someone else comes up with by their intention. You can often have something very surprising or interesting. I don't have that much time, so I don't know if I can fully demonstrate this kind of thing. But let's see if we can. Okay. Maybe we'll get some interesting combinations, right? And so I'm doing this by cutting up the material in kind of the digital area. So that's one kind of media. Another media is images. Maybe this one's easier to demonstrate. I don't know. And what's cool is that we think of a computer as some symbol manipulation machine. But those symbols are not just for the computer, they're for us, right? I've created new symbols through this, and now they exist kind of a little bit detached from their original context. Then they can be solidified into maybe new meanings, new symbols. I think this is a really powerful and maybe interesting idea to work with. We can combine. Anyways, let's keep going. So, yeah, so you can do this with images. And then what I wanted to say was, there's actually a new media that I don't think we're thinking about much. It is the media of the interface itself, right? So, we're talking about this, hidden abstraction of going from text on a book into text, on a newspaper, trying to emulate the newspaper. But then also the interface itself acts like a media in that it has these constraints and it is communicating things. And it is also kind of boxed in our ways of thinking. Right? If we go back to here, the words, the images are communicating, but also the interface. And I don't mean by the designer's intent, but by, if we take the cut-up method and maybe we could break it apart, we can see maybe kind of the forms and constraints of this material, of how, artificial or strange, these boxes are. And then we can even cut up. Let's cut up any interface, right? And in your mind, you're thinking of what is important, right? The text is important, these certain UI elements, what they mean. But if we take them out of their context and try to remix them, okay, maybe this idea. And so, if you want to be, I don't know, it's kind of a different way of thinking, but it's kind of like, let's try. So this is what I mean, where it's like, I want to try to cut up the interface, cut up these things that we're using and be able to be more flexible with what we're doing without having to create a whole new thing from scratch. And it's just a way you could like practice this as a way to see. What I've been doing when you try doing this, you realize maybe the underlying flavor of the media, of what these things are trying to actually communicate, regardless of the content, which is also really interesting. Here's another example of like, I don't know, I just like trying to hijack other interfaces just to do whatever I want. If we want. You know what I mean? Sorry, bear with me. Anyways, yeah, so, yeah, I think, yeah, I just wanted to sort of show this tool. I think it's kind of interesting, but I haven't used it too much. But I think you can have some interesting surprises and see the ways in which the interface as a media is also kind of restricting our thinking into both boxes, but also the symbols that we're using. And when you separate them, just like how you separate text in a book, you start to see how maybe unusual they are and how much they're conditioning into the ways that you're thinking. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Any questions for Arbor?
Yeah, so I find it super interesting, and I was wondering. Ooh.
That's the last part. Because it's also digital, it's just different ways of looking at something.
This is awesome. So I was wondering, all the images that you have, there's like the image content of them, but in their context, they also have a semantic meaning as part of whatever media it is. So have you given more thought about like what it could be to cut this media in the way that you're doing it, but also carry with it the semantics that they still had in their context?
Yeah, like I have a version that when you select it, it will show a little the larger screen in which the context that you took it out of. But with this, I like that you separate this semantic meaning and create a new meaning, because I think it has the potential to create way more interesting insights. If I cut up this news app in this, you can, create amazing poems, amazing montages, things that the designers couldn't think of. So I think right now, the way we think about interfaces is that it's too focused on what the designer thinks should be important for the user. It's been so long that, who cares anymore, right? If I want to cut this up and use it if I want to use the play button as, a symbol in my mind of this hand thing, like, let's go for it. Why not just cut up all these things?
Awesome.
So, yeah. And for just break up the semantic meaning, find new ones.
Last question.
What you just said made me want to see a version of this where you inverse map the mouse clicks to, so I can sort of click on the collage and get Spotify to start playing. It's not really a question, but
that's what I want to do. This was like, I don't know if this is what you were talking about, but like, these could turn into actual new interfaces, maybe through example.
So technically, if you should an artist, it means that you have to sponsor them. That's just the rules. That was amazing. What I also learned that I would need to up my trackpad skills to be able to do anything similar. Thank you so much for sharing. That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks.